Takedown. The life of Iran's top terrorist leader ends on orders from President Donald J. Trump. With retaliation a certainty, is the Middle East on the brink of major conflict? Here in Texas, a church shooter gunned down by armed civilian security. Should the deterrent of concealed carry be the new normal in heavily armed America? And in the city of Fort Worth, the right to life unfolds in a courtroom as a hospital seeks to curtail care essential to survival of a very sick little girl. I'm Greg Groogan, and welcome to What's Your Point, where our panelists call it like they see it. Let's greet them. Starting us off, 1/3 of the three Amigos on KSEV Radio, conservative Ben Streusand. Next up, legal analyst and Houston attorney Carmen Roe. In the three spot, Charles Blain, founder of the advocacy group Urban Reform. Batting cleanup, longtime super neighborhood leader Tomaro Bell. Next up, conservative lawyer and Second Amendment expert Michele Maples. And closing us out on the hot corner, writer, educator, and radio host Antonio Diaz. Let's begin. Call it preemption, call it payback, call it whatever you want. The killing of infamous Iranian General Qasem Soleimani by a U.S. drone strike has pushed the Middle East to the brink of regional conflict. The surgical strike just outside of Baghdad airport came with the full approval of President Donald Trump, who says Soleimani, as head of Iran's radical Quds force, was a terrorist mastermind responsible both directly and indirectly for the death of millions of people, including hundreds of Americans. Democratic frontrunner Joe Biden criticized Mr. Trump's use of lethal force, saying the president has, quote, tossed a stick of dynamite into a tinderbox. Iranian leaders have vowed harsh retaliation for the assassination of a figure many considered the second most powerful in the majority Shia nation. And with that, I'm going to turn to someone who has a husband who dealt with bombs and bullets in the Middle East.
Oh, yeah.
Michele Maples, what's your take on this attack?
This guy had to go. Trump made the exact decision that needed to be made in this difficult time. So let's get one thing straight. This guy supports terrorism. The Quds force in Iran is the terrorist training camp. This is where terrorists go to learn to do the awful things that they do, like plant IEDs and attack American forces. Soleimani is responsible for American deaths. Soleimani is responsible for Iraqi deaths. Soleimani is responsible for the overrun of the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad. This guy had to go, and the world is a safer place because he is now out of this world. Now, you talk about escalation in Iran. Iran is not suicidal. These people like power. They're not going to do anything that is going to threaten their rule of power. Now, Iran has a playbook that they continue to play by, and that is to shoot out drones, that is to apparently attack or hack into the library's website, which probably needed to be hacked into, and go after oil tankers. They're not going to escalate this. That will be their ultimate demise. Okay,
Tomaro Bell, I've been waiting to hear your take on this.
All right, Donald Trump's tweet, November the 29th, 2011. In order to get elected, Barack Obama will start a war in Iran. Donald Trump's tweet, October 9th, 2012. Now that Obama's poll numbers are in the tailspin, watch for him to launch a strike in Libya or Iran. He is desperate. Donald Trump's tweet, September 25th, 2013. Remember what I previously said, Obama will someday attack Iran in order to show how tough he is. Talk about the wag the dog. Okay, look. This right here was meant to be a distraction from the impeachment trial. That is what this is about. Don't get me wrong. Homeboy was awful. Don't you share one tear. But there's a method that we use. You as a president do not go out and just assassinate somebody on your word alone. That is what we have our government for. There are other involvements before you make a decision like that, because don't say what Iranians do. They blow themselves up in terrorist acts all over. They don't care if they die as long as they take you with them.
Ben Streusand, I assume you have a rebuttal of that.
Well, fortunately, we're leaving the Obama-era policy behind, which was to write $150 billion checks that went into the pockets of the IRGC, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. And they used that money to fund Shiite militias all throughout the Middle East and to attack Americans and our diplomats. The Iranians have a strong penchant for attacking our embassies. That seems to be one of their go-to strategies that they've demonstrated frequently and often. And I think President Trump's action is a direct response to the attack on the American embassy in Baghdad, and he is demonstrating that we are no longer going to pursue a policy of just retaliating against the Shiite militia soldiers who shoot the rifles or throw the bombs. We are going to go after the command, the control, the generals, and the strategist, the chief strategist in this case, responsible for killing Americans worldwide.
Tony Diaz, do you agree with Tomaro's contention that this is more political and less about security?
Yes, I also agree when Tomaro said that this guy had to go. Also with Ms. Baines, I think the point is that this fellow also terrorized Iranians. There's some Iranians who are even scared to speak against him even now that he's dead. However, here's the issue. This could have been treated the way Osama bin Laden was taken out or Baghdadi was taken out. It was not. So that's the issue. The judgment in moving now and in this way, and I'm sorry, but we have to make suspect Trump's decisions on everything. One, the impeachment has shown that he's quid pro quo. We don't know his other motives. On top of it, he's been outmaneuvered in foreign policy. North Korea has played him. Additionally, when a president thinks he deserves the Nobel Peace Prize for his dealings with North Korea, and then has the audacity to come in and complicate these issues beyond his scope of knowledge, that's the real issue. And I just don't trust Trump to do the right thing at this moment. And we're not safer because you're right. Iran is not going to stand up to the most powerful military in the history of the planet. What they're going to do is asymmetrical attacks, which is terrorism, cyber attacks. They're going to close the Persian Gulf, and they're going to outmaneuver us by dealing with other foreign countries. They're doing naval maneuvers with Russia in China. We got to remind people in Afghanistan, the U.S. was at war with Afghanistan, but under the table, Russia was fueling our enemies. So this is out of Trump's capacity to deal with properly.
Okay, Charles, Blain, severe revenge. They are capable of extending that military reach. Are you worried about it, or was this the right call?
Well, I think it was the right call, and to push back against something Tony said, you know, whether you like Trump, support Trump or not, I think in this instance he's shown he can lead, and the reason you can't do it the same way you did with Osama bin Laden is because, you know, with Osama, that's a stateless terror organization leader. This guy is was the second in command of a nation of some odd 82 million people, and so also I think another thing is we're talking about the extremes here. The other extreme could be that this leads to de-escalation. I think if you look back at the tanker wars in the 80s and you see how when the U.S. got involved and started, you know, kind of pushing different initiatives that may have been a little more out of proportion with the provocations, you saw a de-escalation going forward. I think we could see that going forward in this instance. You don't know, and I think that to just have all of these, you know, scare rhetoric about what's going to happen when we really don't know is just, it's not healthy for the American public.
Okay, Carmen Roe, I always keep you for last because I don't know where you're going to come at on this issue.
You know, this is an interesting issue. I don't know a lot about military history and things like that, but I think it's a totally different world when we talk about this idea that there's a drone that we could send over there and kill one of these top leaders. And I think the games are changing with all of the technology that's out there. And so what's going to happen next, whether or not it's asymmetrical, there's no question. Everything's coming from, you know, a different area. It's like shadow boxing. So, you know, for people who are, you know, pro-Trump, I think this was a smart and savvy move to let them know what our power is, and what's going to happen in response, I think, is going to be on the same level of things we've never seen before.
Okay, I got 20 seconds. You want to take it?
What I wanted to say was when he was talking about writing a check, that Obama then was writing checks to these people, we can't even talk about writing checks in this instance right here, and I mean that because for right now in America today, while we're sitting here, first show for this year, we're in a higher debt than we have ever been. And you want to talk about people writing checks to Iranians to use against other leaders. This is different. This is totally different. This right here, to take this kind of action on your own, that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the act itself, but it was the method. Don't say you're not putting our country at risk.
Got to leave it there. When we come back, a single shot from a volunteer security guard prevents mass carnage at a Texas church. In a nation clinging tightly to its guns, is mass concealed carry our best defense? Stay with us. A week has passed since a shotgun-wielding man walked into the West Freeway Church of Christ in the Fort Worth suburb of White Settlement and opened fire. After killing 2 parishioners, the mentally ill assailant was stopped by a single fatal bullet to the head from the pistol of Jack Wilson, a member of the church's volunteer security team. Gun rights advocates hailed the life-saving response as the heroic prevention of much greater bloodshed. But others see the genuine need for armed security in any place Americans gather as a tragic symptom of too many firearms and too little control. What's your take on this, Carmen Roe?
You know, I think, unfortunately, these incidents keep happening, and we're trying to do everything we can to get smart legislation to make changes. This is from a 2017 legislative change where they empowered people and encouraged them to get the training that was needed, that was used here, to put together informal security teams to protect large groups of people under these circumstances. And so, you know, I agree with those people who say, look, one person lost is too many. But the idea that there's a person there like this gentleman who was trained and ready to act and did act prevented the loss of a lot more people. And so while there's 2 people that are dead in addition to the assailant, it could have been so much worse. And so I think that, you know, the laws that we put in place are smart laws that are helping to protect the people inside there. Now, as far as the mental health issue, obviously he should have never had a gun, and those are the kinds of laws that we need to look into.
Charles Blain, you agree?
Yeah, no, I do agree. I don't think that this is a symptom of the breakdown, a symptom of too many guns. I think it's a symptom of a breakdown of social order. It's sad that we need to have armed security in churches, but that's a more global problem that we need to discuss. This guy shouldn't have had a gun. He had prior assault convictions, prior property crime convictions. I think there was a domestic violence conviction in there. He was sentenced to court-ordered therapy and was ordered psychotropic drugs. I mean, there was no reason this guy should have had a gun. And even former therapists had noted that he had a tendency to be violent if he was off of his medication. So I really do think that that should be a discussion, like we talked about on this program before, making sure that proper reporting requirements are followed through, and that instances like this guy's issues are reported into a system so he cannot get a gun. I think that's the area that needs to be addressed more so than global gun control.
Okay, hey, stay with us. We're going to continue our discussion of the future of firearms in America after a short break. Continue our discussion of a mass shooting that wasn't and what it portends in the ongoing national struggle over gun rights and gun control. Hey, look, I'm going to go to you, Tomaro Bell. You represent neighborhoods where gun violence has been a plague, but what do you think of this situation where a civilian volunteer protected his fellow parishioners?
Good job. Good job. I applaud you. I do. I have to agree with Carmen 100%. This would have been way worse had he not been there. The church that I attend, Good Hope Missionary Baptist Church on North McGregor in Houston, Texas, 7704 zip code, we have security. Many churches started getting security before Charlotte, but when that happened, a lot of churches up their security. Not only that, African American churches were getting robbed back in the late 90s. They were, so they had security. So I definitely believe that you should have somebody with a certified license to carry, and you should have somebody protecting your church, especially at a large church. This, unfortunately, as Charles said, this is the time we live in. And when you know mental patients are not getting the care they get and can get a gun quicker than somebody can legally, you have to think beyond your normal pattern. You're not about protecting, you're protecting everybody.
Okay, look, this shouldn't be an issue of either or, more guns or more restrictions. Ben, what do you think about just enforcing the laws that we already have with some fervor?
Well, clearly we have several incidents where you have felons who are prohibited under Texas law from obtaining firearms or other laws as it pertains to different states. I personally, and I view myself as sort of in the libertarian side of the conservative party, I don't have a problem with active police enforcement if a threatening individual goes on the internet and starts making terroristic threats against churches or schools or any other institutions or places where large groups of people gather. I'm not an attorney, but from everything I've read and from my constitutional law professor, Dr. Gerald Treese, I'll give him a plug, former dean of the South Texas College of Law.
Treese is good.
You know, you can go out and you can go knock on this individual's doors and you can bring him into the station and you can disrupt a potential shooting. And I want to see more of that and more monitoring of the internet.
So that wasn't an endorsement of red flag law.
That was an endorsement of this particular, what I'm saying. Red flag laws is sort of it's a different shade. When you say red flag laws, I think you're referring to someone picking up the phone and calling the police saying this person's a threat. I don't know that that's what I'm saying, but if someone goes on the internet, they're in the public square, that's a different shade.
Let's go to Tony on this.
Well, I have to push back against Charles Blain because he pushed back against me earlier. But social order is breaking down, but that's a result of laws, policies, what we talk about, what's on the internet, and that all goes together. So one easy analogy is I hear Democrats and Republicans bickering about if this law worked, if that law didn't work. Let's look at how red lights work. Red lights work because it's 3 a.m., you're by yourself, you stop at the red light. Why? Because it's order, it's law, you might get caught, it's the right thing to do. We need to really scrutinize at every level, sit down and have smart talks. Let's bring red flag laws to the table. Let's bring armed personnel at schools to the table, and let's have a profound discussion. That's how you fix the social order. Right now, bickering and thinking one law did work or didn't work, or one case example proves it all, is just gonna keep us in this mess that we're in.
Okay. It's no coincidence I saved Michele Maples, our Second Amendment expert, for last. Give us your take.
All right, unlike Tony and Charles, like Salt and Peppa said, I'm gonna push it real good. Now, with that said, this is exactly why we have such liberal gun laws. The entire purpose of our legislation when it comes to law-abiding citizens having access to their firearms out in public places is to prevent this would-be massacre. This is the law working, Tony. Tony, this is concealed handgun laws working and doing exactly what they are meant to do. Unfortunately, free will and evil exist in this world. And all you're going to do with another gun law is take guns out of law-abiding citizens' hands. You're going to end up having only an armed bad guy and not an armed good guy. I mean, that old platitude, the only way to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun, is exactly what happened here.
Okay,
Real quick. Profoundly, how do we mitigate free will? There's not enough to do slogans or platitudes. Let's really get to the essence of it. That's existential questions.
You got an idea on how to fix it, Tony?
Yeah, let's go. We got 3 hours, though.
Okay, I'm sure we're coming back to this topic in future shows. But coming up, a second 4-year term begins for Houston Mayor Sylvester Turner, joined by a bevy of new faces on City Council. We'll seek predictions from our panel as the city of Houston charges into a fresh decade, so stick around. Welcome back. The new year has brought a new term of office for Houston's mayor and a fresh list of priorities. At Thursday's inauguration, Sylvester Turner pledged to address the city's worn-out streets, attack homelessness, and better prepare Houston for future floodwaters. The mayor also promised to complete restructuring of the fire department, a reform plan certain to trigger a continuance of controversy. What do you think of that, Charles Blain?
Oh, yeah. I mean, talk about kicking the anthill. They're going to be ready to fight that again. So he mentioned that he wants to move forward with this, but he has to go to the legislature. So we're looking at next legislative session, and then that brings in the whole political discussion of does the House flip? Does it go in his favor? Can he get legislation through easier than before? And so, you know, he appointed Dave Martin as mayor pro tem, who's kind of in line with restructuring the fire department. There's a lot of talk about who the next speaker might be. It could be someone out of Kingwood, which, you know, there's an alliance there. So I think it's going to be a big fight, and I think the firefighters are certainly geared up for it. They're still mad, so I don't think that's going away anytime soon.
No one knows City Hall better than Tomaro Bell. Give us some predictions and some thoughts.
Okay, before we go to that, according to Texas Monthly, it could be somebody out of Fifth Ward could be the next Speaker of the House. Okay, moving on from that. Moving on from that. Anyway, with the new City Council members that have been seated, I hope, this is what I'll say, I hope that the flooding and the cleaning of the gutters, so conveyance. I can't say that bad enough. It's not about the water staying there. It's about having the water, having somewhere to go. And when the gutters and the infrastructure is aged as ours is, even if you clean out the bayous, even if you do all that, you're still going to have flooding because once the streets go, the next thing next to the street is usually a house. So I hope that does occur. On the fire department issue, I'm gonna leave that like he said it. That's a whole big ant bed to be kicking, but hopefully they'll get it worked out. But I'm hoping that the leadership that has come now looks into their own mind and decides how they want to be effective while they're sitting in the horseshoe.
Quick thought, Streusand.
Yeah, sounds great. I wish he would do it. I just don't have any confidence that flooding is going to be the #1 issue that he tackles. It should be the #1 issue that he tackles. And I got to tell you, if there's a conservative speaker from Kingwood, the conservatives are going to revolt.
Okay, Tony Diaz. Majority Hispanic city. I think we have one Hispanic on city council. Does that bug you?
Well, let's get something straight. The Latino vote delivered. They delivered for Mayor Turner. He got a huge amount of the Latino vote. Now, we need to talk about changing the way city council districts are carved up, elected. We need Democrats to reach out to Latinos as well. And I think there's a lot of voter suppression, et cetera. But I do want to say this about the mayor's inauguration speech. It's supposed to set the tone. It's not a whole policy discussion. I'm excited because the mayor had Poet Laureate Leslie Contreras Schwartz deliver a wonderful poem on work inspired by the mayor's mom. It's a great message that art, literature, and culture coming together to improve social order. It's an excellent time for Houston.
Final word, 20 seconds.
So we voted for more of the same, all right? So we cannot expect a sea change from Mayor Sylvester Turner. Restructuring of the fire department, what does that even mean? All I know is Dallas Fire Department is poaching Houston because of the way that our firefighters have been treated.
Okay, we're going to leave it right there. Still ahead. He spent much of his adult life serving the nation overseas in the State Department. Now Democrat Suraj Kulkarni is looking to represent Texans in Congress. The candidate for District 22 brings his insight to our hot seat after the break. Welcome back. Suraj Kulkarni is no stranger to the people of Southeast Texas. A veteran of America's Foreign Service, Kulkarni came within 5 points of unseating incumbent Pete Olson in the last cycle. Undeterred, he's back making his case to voters in what's become a bona fide battleground district. Suraj Kulkarni, welcome back to the hot seat.
Thank you for having me, Greg. I appreciate it.
Okay, Iraq, Russia, Israel. You served the nation in some of the most turbulent venues on the planet. No surprise, we seek your educated analysis on the fatal attack on Iran's Quds commander. A figure some saw as the second most powerful in the Islamic Republic. What is your take? Did we make a mistake?
So I actually served in Kirkuk, where this all started a week and a half ago with rocket strikes and the killing of an American contractor. And obviously I also spent time in Baghdad. So there's a couple things that I think we need to recognize. First of all, this is a very complex region. Just in the place where I was, Kirkuk, we have Shia Arabs, Sunni Arabs, we have multiple groups of Kurds, we have Turkoman who are influenced by Turkey, we have multiple groups of Christians, all in the same space. And they're shifting alliances, and there's not just good guys and bad guys in this area. The second thing is, even though we know that Soleimani was an awful person, he killed many others. He killed many Americans, thousands, tens of thousands of locals. We have to think about the consequence of our actions. Every single action that we've taken in the Middle East, especially since 2003, has led to this point right now. So we have to be very careful and deliberative whenever we take any action in the region. The second thing is that we have many Americans across the region right now. Their safety and their security should be of utmost importance. And we should be thinking about that because any one of them right now could be a target for Iranian retaliation, and we have no idea what form that's going to take. Even the best military minds can't say with certainty what's going to happen. So we have to look at the situation very carefully. And the last thing that I'll say is that in the past few months especially, we've seen foreign service officers attacked. We've seen uniformed military who've served in Iraq attacked. We've seen our intelligence services attacked by our own government. These are not the deep state. These are the people who are keeping us safe every day. These are the people we trust and rely on right now, especially in conflicts like this. So that's one of the reasons why I'm running for U.S. Congress right now, because I think we need national security experience in government at this point.
Okay, you seek to serve in Congress and have no doubt followed the impeachment process. Based upon the evidence, are the charges of abuse of power and obstruction of Congress justified?
So this is also one of my areas. As a Russia expert, I worked in Russia for several years, and I also worked on countering Russian disinformation in Ukraine after the invasion of Crimea. The bottom line is that this has been treated as a political football, and it really shouldn't. It's a matter of national security. And there's very serious issues going on. As we saw recently, some of the evidence, some of the emails that have come out have shown that The DOD had concerns that the actions that we were taking in Ukraine with respect to military aid, a national security issue, were illegal. These are very serious issues, and they should not be treated as just one more political point to be scored. And so what I expect from Mitch McConnell and people on both sides of the aisle is to treat this with the seriousness that it deserves, because this is not about partisanship. This is about our national security. We need more patriots and fewer partisans in our government right now.
If you had been posted in Kyiv and saw what went down, would you have raised the alarm?
So I have several colleagues who were testifying on the Hill. In fact, I was there a few weeks ago when they were. And I've got to say, I'm so proud of my Foreign Service officer colleagues for standing up and doing the right thing. It's not about whether you're Democrat or Republican. It's about your loyalty to the country, your loyalty to the Constitution, to the oath that you swore. So I absolutely would have testified to what I knew, because that's the critical issue. We need to know what the facts are. And if you're not interested in the facts here, then how can you protect our national security in this country?
Last question, it's got to be short. Medicare for all, that's what Sanders and Warren have called for. Joe Biden, a hybrid proposal. I know you like universal health care. Moving forward, where do you stand, real quickly?
So the bottom line is that we have two big problems. Prescription drug prices, healthcare costs overall skyrocketing, and secondly, tens of millions of people still without access. I'm willing to sit down with anybody, Republican, Democrat, Independent, who's willing to solve those two problems.
Okay. Hey, we'll have you back, Suraj Kulkarni. Thanks for being in the hot seat.
Thank you.
Okay, still ahead. A severely ill child in a Texas hospital seeking to stop life-extending care. The controversy surrounding Tinslee Lewis, it's front and center after the break. 260 miles to our north, a judge has ruled in favor of a hospital's request to remove 11-month-old Tinslee Lewis from life support. Little girl suffers from severe incurable heart and lung defects, and doctors at Cook Children's Medical Center claim she is in pain. But Tinslee's mother, Trinity, says the ruling amounts to a judge deciding that her daughter's life isn't worth living. Governor Greg Abbott, State Attorney General Ken Paxton, and Texas Right to Life are all voicing public support for the Lewis family. No other hospital or care facility in the country is offered to accept Tinslee for treatment. Now, Friday, an appeals court stepped in and ordered Cook's children to continue vital care, at least for the time being. Charles Blain, I know you want to talk about this.
Yeah, so a good friend of mine, Emily Cook, is one of the attorneys on this case. Texas Right to Life has been fighting this. This is a big issue because, as the mother said, what the law does, this 10-day law, is giving the hospital the ability to determine if this life is valuable enough to fight for or not. And they don't have an incentive to work with other care providers or cooperate, because at the end of that 10 days, they know they have the power to pull the plug if they believe that this life should not continue to go on. So it's a terrible situation. Glad to see the court issued a temporary injunction or whatever the case may be to keep her alive for the time being. They need to fix this law, but they also need to fix the situation and ensure that the mother's pleas are heard.
Carmen Roe, from your legal perspective as you looked at this case, thoughts?
It's really interesting. The advanced directive law that we're talking about is one that was just put into place and is unique to Texas. We are the only people who do this. And it came from a situation where a young lady, her life was fought from both sides of the family. It went through legal proceedings for decades before she was ultimately taken off life support. So this case is interesting because it creates an opportunity for the humane treatment of a person whose family can't agree. The interesting part is one judge didn't make this decision. An entire panel of 25 experts in the hospital made the decision, and there was no other facility that would accept this young lady, and that's supposed to be the check and the balance there. But I think everybody needs to take a really close look at this new law and how it's applying to this young lady.
And this has really stirred up Republican forces, conservative forces, folks who see themselves as protectors of life.
Well, they're somewhat split, because Texas Right to Life is on the side of the family. There's a large pro-life organization in Austin, Texas Alliance for Life, that was on the other side of this issue during the legislative debate that Carmen was talking about. Personally, I am extraordinarily uncomfortable with any law that farms out that decision to anybody other than the patient or the immediate family. I just cannot accept the decision of so-called experts. They are not in the position in this particular case to make that judgment. And when they say that the child is in pain, that, to me, that just indicates the child is, alive.
Tomaro Bell, a mom,
Yeah, I'm truly curious to see how you feel about this.
First off, to the mother, stay strong, and the family. This is a extremely, extremely unimaginable pain that you're going through. And for a group of doctors, nurses, the janitor, I don't know who the hospital got opinion from, and I really don't care. But to decide that this baby should die the way the baby, and now mind you, the hospital's gonna bill Medicare, Medicaid, or whatever for the cost, so it's not like they're not going to get something out of it, but for them to decide that they supersede any family member or the judgment, and I have to agree. The fact that they said, oh, well, the baby's hurting. Well, if the baby is in pain, in order to feel pain and exhibit you feel pain, you're alive.
Michelle, 15, 20 seconds.
All right, so the law here that we're discussing, I think, has a real constitutional problem. So my personal opinion, I don't want anybody making decisions for my children who is not me, right? And nobody should be able to supersede my authority as a parent of my child. The law here basically says that a physician can end life-saving treatment if they determine it futile, even against the family's wishes. That's the law we're talking about. I believe there's a constitutional argument to be made that deprives us of life, liberty, and property and happiness.
We're going to have to leave it right there. When we come back, Texan Julian Castro calls off his presidential bid as Mike Bloomberg begins a critical courtship of voters in the Lone Star State. Stay with us. What's your point? We'll be right back. Welcome back. 355 days after announcing his bid to become America's next president, Texan Julian Castro closed down his long-shot campaign. Never elevating above the 4% mark in the polls, Castro blamed a primary system he believes discriminates against candidates of color, citing early contests in mostly white Iowa and New Hampshire. Meantime, a well-heeled candidate who is choosing to skip both early battles was investing time right here in delegate-rich Texas. Billionaire former New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg block-walked in Fort Bend County this week and told Fox 26 he doesn't believe his gun control agenda is a disadvantage in the Lone Star State.
If you survey NRA members who own guns, about 85% of them are in favor of background checks and in favor of red flag laws. And if I were a gun owner and I wanted to make sure I could remain a gun owner, I would do everything I could to stop this carnage.
Okay, we're going to go, before we talk about Bloomberg, Uber Castro supporter, Tony Diaz, a eulogy perhaps?
I'm really proud for him for really doing a really great job of bringing up issues that were not talked about, representing himself really well, representing the community really well. And let's get one thing straight. I'm going to support whoever the Democratic nominee is, but I commend Castro for bringing up issues that are holes in the Democrat approach. So, for example, to beat Trump, you've got to activate and register voters that are not involved or feel involved. If you're going to claim to be the progressive party and you have no black or Latino presidential candidates on your debate stage, that doesn't seem authentic. It sounds like status quo. So I think what we need to do is remember what he was appealing to, bring him back. And Elizabeth Warren, pick Vice President Castro, and you're going to win.
Okay, hey, I want to go to Charles Blain real quick on Bloomberg. What's your take on him? Do you think he can do well in Texas?
I think that he's going to have a hard time overcoming some of the nanny state regulations that he passed when he was in New York and his gun control position. I mean, that's going to be a cornerstone for Texas voters, left or right. And so I do think he's going to have a difficulty overcoming that. But I mean, when you look at the things like him trying to ban big gulps and stuff like that, while it's funny to joke about, these are actual regulations that do in the long run hurt people and that are just kind of oppressive by government. So when you start looking at his record as mayor, I think there's a lot that he needs to overcome. And sorry for your loss, Tony.
Okay, 30 seconds. I'm going to go.
I can tell you mean it.
Number one, I don't see how big gulps can hurt anybody. Get 2 drinks, get 2 larges. Anyway, I am impressed big time with Bloomberg's commercials. They are excellent. He definitely has me in his. I have him in my eyesight because though Tony said what he said about the different colors on the stage, I'm about who can beat Trump. I don't care if you're pink. Who can beat Trump? I really believe Bloomberg getting his game up. I believe he'd be an submissive opponent for Trump.
Ben, you talk to a lot of conservatives. Are they concerned about Bloomberg?
Not especially. I mean, my condolences to Tony, but I just don't see Tony and the one other Castro supporter supporting Bloomberg. I just don't see it.
I feel the love today, guys. Appreciate it.
But look, the Democratic Party rules for the nomination, you have to get to 15% in order to get any delegates. And so, and roughly half the delegates will be chosen on Super Tuesday. And because of the addition of California on Super Tuesday, I just see this massive fracturing of delegates in the Democrat Party. I think Biden probably wins Texas with a plurality, but nobody goes into the convention with the majority of the delegates.
Bloomberg spending a lot of money. I got 15 seconds for you. What do you think?
So I think Charles nailed it on the head. Bloomberg wants to control what you drink. You want this type of guy as president who will tell you what to drink, what to eat, how you can defend yourself? I don't foresee him doing very well in Texas with a bunch of independent thinkers.
Carmen, you like him? Are you impressed?
You know, I think it's interesting what his rhetoric is regarding guns, because he intimates that his position is going to be closer to Julian, Castro, or Beto than it is what Texans are going to support. I think that it's almost an implied threat that if you want to keep your guns, you better get on board with some of these laws that change how you possess those weapons. And so I think that's a dangerous position, but he's running the middle, so we'll see.
And he's spending the money.
Yep.
Okay, when we come back, an extremely harsh penalty for what prosecutors called a hate crime. But did the burning of a gay pride banner merit 16 years in prison? That question on our table after the break. Under the category controversial, this topic makes the grade. A man in Iowa sentenced to 16 years in prison after first stealing, then burning a gay pride flag from a church. Local prosecutors called the act a hate crime, and because Adolfo Martinez had a previous criminal record, the judge was empowered to more than double the defendant's punishment as an habitual offender. Question: if the Supreme Court affirms a person's right to burn an American flag as free speech, how is this act any different? And one also wonders how the same crime would be dealt with in progressive jurisdictions like Harris County, where full-blown criminal justice reform is underway. I'm going to Legal Eagle. Michele Maples.
So I don't think this judge is real worried about being overturned on appeal. So real quick, a quick con law lesson. There's this thing called the First Amendment, and the First Amendment protects free speech. And within that sort of protected speech, an individual can burn an American flag as an expression, as it is protected speech. And now we've got a judge in Iowa saying that the burning of a pride flag is a hate crime. The two cannot coexist in the same world together. There is absolutely a violation of this individual. He looks nuts, don't get me wrong, but my husband fights for that idiot to say whatever he wants to say, and that's what makes our country different than any other place on the planet.
Legal Eagle number 2, Carmen Roe, what's your take?
I agree. It's a total breakdown of our criminal justice system, and it's sad. First, there's a mental health issue that's clearly undiagnosed, never even discussed. In the course of what was a trial, Michele and I were asking whether he had counsel. I mean, this is protected speech. It's symbolic speech. It's an issue that was never even litigated. Putting a person like this who has an undiagnosed mental health issue, who we're mad at, in prison for what will be about 3 years, this man's going to be released. This is not the kind of outcome that our criminal justice system should produce, not legally, not factually, and not morally.
Okay, Charles Blain, in this county of criminal justice reform, you think he'd have gotten 16 years?
Nowadays. Here's the thing. I think it'd be different here. One of the reasons that we haven't talked about yet that he got 3 years was because of Iowa's 3-strike law, and this was his 3rd strike. So he did 2 other crimes that he was found guilty of prior to that, and that's an underlying issue too. Why are they still following through with 3-strike laws? Because you should give the judge the discretion to not give somebody 3 years for something that is an expression of the First Amendment nonetheless. So I think they need to talk about 3-strike laws a little more.
Okay, I got 5 seconds.
Yeah, in
Right
Harris
here.
County, he would be out on no cash bail.
Look, I agree with her. I agree with her. No, I don't agree with you. I agree with what they said. If you can burn a U.S. flag, how come burning a gay pride flag is a crime?
Alyssa, are we out of time? Okay. When we come back, public school students wage political protest. It's a new law. They get a free pass in Virginia. It's for parents. Do you think this is a good deal? Stay with us. The debate is just ahead. Welcome back. Here's one for you parents. One of the largest school districts in the country has decided to allow its students to attend political rallies or protests without penalty. Fairfax County Public Schools in Virginia is limiting the excused absence to 1 per year for all students 7th grade and above. School board members say they hope to encourage civic engagement, but critics say the net effect of the policy is to fuel progressive activism. We go to our #1 progressive. Tony, you like this?
It's a great idea, because I think why let parents keep lying? Because what's going to happen is if you're going to protest about an issue, you're going to go anyway. This is great because you're going to teach your kid, parents and students don't have to lie together to the school. Let's plan accordingly. And it's a right-wing stereotype that this is all for progressive. It's hard to get people to get active at all. This is a great idea.
Michele Maples.
I think there should be a follow-up with a research paper discussing your argument for pro and then
Good
the
idea.
rebuttal for that, and let's make attorneys out of all of them. Be able to argue both sides.
Tomaro Bell, you like this?
They lost me at 7th grade. What the hell you arguing about at 7th grade? What do you know about? Give me a break. No, I don't.
Okay, Charles Blain.
Lord help me if my 7th through 12th grade self skipped school to go protest. My dad would come and find me, and that would be the end of it. This is ridiculous.
Okay, Carmen Roe, are we going too far here?
Take the unexcused absence. I was telling them this is a situation where you literally get 1 day a year. You have to give 2 days notice, as if we have that kind of planning for real issues that present themselves. And you have to check in with the school at least once on the day you're not going to be there, or the schools will lose their accreditation. This is ridiculous.
Make them little
Ben,
lawyers.
you got about 30. So
Oh,
close this
Lord,
out.
please no more attorneys. You just have to sign a statement saying you won't be an attorney. Look, liberal school boards are going to use this, and they're going to control which events they can go to, and they're going to approve liberal, progressive protests, and they're going to oppose conservative, non-progressive
They can go to
protests.
conservative
It's just
protests
a
too if they want.
social engineering.
Free country.
We'll keep an eye on that.